What's the criteria? When do you trigger this cap? And will you even have to trigger this cap?
We don't have to trigger this cap if our markets will not hit those excessive prices that we witnessed this year. And indeed, Commission was very clear when we presented our proposal that our aim is not to opt for regulated prices and suspend markets as such, but we have to take care of our consumers and avoid the wartime premiums or marked up prices compared to the other LNG hubs. And we will do so. The mechanism will be ready if the prices are above 180 euros. And on top of that, there has to be spread at least 35 euros. So if other global hubs will also witness similar extremely high prices at the LNG markets, then we will not trigger this mechanism.
And of course, you make it clear there's a double trigger to this, and that's important to clarify here. It's not just a 180, but it's also the spread over the LNG. But Commissioner, you know that there has been criticism that any cap would send the wrong signal to the market. It would show that Europe is not competitive. This is a fierce market, and China is not even fully open. Do you worry perhaps that overall this could backfire on the European Union?
We always knew that this kind of mechanism will have its benefits, but of course it comes with risks. We have never done something like that. And to avoid possible unwanted consequences, we also set into the legislation several safeguards. One of those is that our agencies who are monitoring the situation on the security of supply on gas markets, and also our agency ESMA, who monitors what is happening in financial markets, they will give us, before this mechanism will be operational, also their assessment already in the end of January. So mechanism will be operational itself by 15th of February, but 3 weeks earlier we have this assessment from agencies, and if there is something that really triggers alert, then the Commission has also the right to react accordingly. But we see that so far European buyers have been very successful at attracting alternative LNG supplies. We do need them. We will need them also next year. But there is a limit how much we can pay. And now with the spread, this is clear that we will also be willing to pay higher prices than other international hubs. And that, I believe, makes our market also for the next year a very attractive market.
And Commissioner, we're going to get into next year, but before we get there, I just want to clarify one thing. What you just said now, if you strip away the jargon, is that if it gets to a point where it's obvious that supply is more important than the price, you would not hesitate to call off this cap. You would halt it.
Indeed, we do have certain criteria where we have to suspend this mechanism. And if there is a risk to our security supply, then we know that we are under the emergency. If any of our member states will trigger emergency level, and this is a serious thing, so far we have been able to get through this disruption of Russian gas flows without this situation, then we have to react. And member states and ministers yesterday gave also Commission that right to react immediately.
And you mentioned Russia. By the way, the Russians say Europe will pay for this dearly. There's still flows going through Ukraine. What kind of retaliation do you expect from Russia on this?
We have seen since spring that Russia doesn't need any excuses to cut off the supply. They have done so, and there is not much that Russia can do to retaliate, because there are also certain limitations for them, what kind of routes they can use to export their natural gas. But since the beginning of this year, since January, we have had in place our regional gas security groups. So we were prepared that Russia will cut completely its gas flows already since the beginning of the war. It has not happened yet, but it might happen tomorrow without any excuse that Russia will need.
And Commissioner, let's talk about the weather, because last week was very, very cold. I mean, we were in Brussels, it was freezing, and yet there were no blackouts. Are you in a position now, with the numbers that you have, the savings that you see, the storage that has been built, to say you can guarantee there won't be blackouts this winter in Europe? I'm talking about January, I'm talking about February, and potentially March.
There will be no blackouts due to the lack of gas. Our underground gas storage is full. It is still full. And our power generators who need gas, they are protected consumers. Of course, you never are fully protected against unplanned maintenance works, but because our electricity market is so well interconnected, neighbors can help their neighbors. And this is actually what we are doing right now with also Ukraine and Moldova, who are now interconnected with Europe. And despite Russia's atrocious attacks against civil infrastructure, we still can support even this country who is at war.
So you say no blackouts. And Commissioner, the storage, though, for next year, that story looks very, very challenging for Europe. We should know the storage that we have full this year is partly thanks to Russia. That's not going to be the case next year. How do you see the prospects for 2023? It looks very difficult from the outside.
We are already preparing ourselves for next filling season. We have trajectory in place, and we have mapped all the free capacities of LNG terminals, so we know how to transport alternative gas supplies even to the landlocked countries, and we do so. So the best preparation, of course, for next winter is saving gas right now, because if we will end this heating season with half-full storage, the challenge for next year is significantly less severe than with empty storage. And right now we have here in Brussels plus degrees. That helps too.
And of course, that's been the political message throughout. Save gas this winter. It has been across every European country. But Commissioner, my final question to you, and this really matters because it could give a hint about the gas cap. When it comes to the oil cap on Russian oil, is it working? What kind of information, feedback do you have? Are people playing by the rules? And of course, I mean the insurers and the shippers.
It's impossible to get insurance from European Union or from our like-minded partners unless you apply to this oil price cap. And that means that there is a limited market for oil tankers. Saying that, of course, there are also some big buyers of Russian crude oil who have received significant discounts already before. And our aim is to cut Russian revenues. We don't want to finance and we don't want to be involved with transport in case they can finance their war machine.